All right, I'm going to come out of where I can see. Okay, great. There you are. I had a teacher growing up back in the day who used to say to us as a class, I want you to think before you speak. These were wise words. Think before you speak. Now, a lot of my classmates were better than that than I was, because I tend to be a little bit impulsive. Some of you know this. Very first church and seminary, I was interning, had just finished the first sermon I'd ever spoken. I'm in the meet and greet line, getting to know the congregation, big church, a lot of people, and I see a young lady coming through the aisle, and she's well-rounded, and I said, "Oh, you're expecting. How many months along are you?" "I'm not pregnant." You don't really recover from that one. Fast forward a couple years at church in Michigan. They're having a great time, a Christmas party, very festive, fellowship event. People are engaging. We're playing euchre, couples at a table. I'm in the Christmas spirit and joyful. And I see on the floor what I thought. How many of you ever seen the movie Christmas Story? And the old man gets a package in the mail. It's a leg lamp, Fragile, you know, the electric sex on the window, and the kids rubbing the leg. Well, I see on the floor, and I pick it up, and it's a leg with a black stocking, and I said, "Fragile! It's a special award!" And everybody's looking at me. And the lady across the table goes from Christmas cheerful to ashen white, in an aggressive, curt manner says, "Pastor, that's Joanna's prosthetic leg." Talking about putting your foot in your mouth. So here I am holding this, thinking I was being clever, feeling like the horse's patouche. I don't know what to do as I have this thing hoisted up now and have been called out for my error. So I looked at Joanna and said, "I'm so sorry. Should I give you your leg?" Put it anyway. Think before you speak. Now, of course, these could have been much worse than they were. They were bad. Believe me, they were bad. They were awful. But at the same time, James is talking about these different metaphors. You know, a small bit goes in the mouth of a 1,000-pound animal, a horse, and with that bit, you can steer it where you'd like to go. A ship has a rudder, and though there could be great winds, the rudder can steer that ship to change course, to turn around. But he says, how we speak matters. And he goes on to tell the whole community, hey, not everybody should line up to be teachers of faith. And it doesn't say of faith specific, but it is the implication. He says, because you will be held to a higher standard. In other words, it won't just be what you say, it'll also be people scrutinizing how you live. Do you practice what you preach? Do you reflect the things you are teaching to others? You have this responsibility in the weight of what you're sharing in the gospel and who Jesus is and who God is in the world. Then are you also living that in a genuine way? Is it changing your life? And you know this to be true about James because James is no kind of holds barred as he's talking in his letter. He's going through that whole faith works debate in the 2nd chapter. He says, you tell me you believe in God because of something up here that you believe, and that's great. Hey, even Satan and all his pals believe in Jesus and shudder. I'll show you my faith by what I do, not just by what I believe in here, but how it changes me in my life. And so it gets me to thinking, if James were here, might be asking each of us, you know, it's great you're here. It's great that you're all here. It is great. But if today was your last day and God called you to the table and said, okay, tell me, What have you been up to with this life I've given you? How have you used it? How has this faith shown through you? What have you done with it? What have you done with the gift I've given you? Oh. So it's not just words, but how words are put into action. And I think when many of us hear this story from the book of James about speech, we think about how words are spoken. And so we think literally about the things we say or have been said to us. But I'd like you to consider this text has a lot wider implications in our world today, because if we talk about the typed or text or tweeted word, I have somebody who has very different opinions or views on my Facebook feed or my Twitter feed. And so, none of you ever do this. So I'm going to type something that gives me the satisfaction of having the last word and kind of diminishes what they said. And I can just anonymously put it out there in cyberspace, right? Nobody does that. None of you have ever done that. Gotten into a cyber argument with anybody? Nobody? Okay, good. But James says, when you throw words out carelessly, haphazardly, in the inner space of internet, and you're not sure who they'll reach or where a person is when they hear them, or how it might catch them, or how they might hear it without any benefit of facial expression or intonation, just printed word, the kind of damage that does. It's like, he says, it's like a spark from a small flame that can set a forest on fire and burn everything. Listen to this analogy. It's not just where the spark hits, it's everything that's living in that forest. Every organism that shares those trees, that ground, everything is affected by it, and everything that was once beautiful and interrelated is turned to ash. And if you think that doesn't have an impact today, when people carelessly toss out words or labels or brutal, ugly speech about groups of people, broad brushstrokes, whether it's political or it's ethnicity, and it's ugly, then James has a lot of power in this, be careful what you say. Because a small word can put and do a lot of damage. James Seymour Hoffman and Meryl Streep star in a movie called Doubt. Anybody seen it? One. All right, great. I'm sorry, over here. I did not see over here. Apologies to the right. So in the movie Doubt, Seymour Hoffman plays a priest, and Meryl Streep and some others are nuns, and they suspect him of doing something inappropriate. And so Seymour Hoffman, in this kind of famous scene, is preaching a sermon, a homily, in the Mass. And he starts talking about a woman who has spoken loosely, gossip, about her neighbor. And she's gone to the priest to talk about and to confess the things she has said about her neighbor. And she says, "Father, have I done wrong?" And he says, in his homily, "You've played fast and loose with the reputation of your neighbor as if you knew them. You've destroyed their character because it made you feel good. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go home, find a pillow, take the pillow up to the rooftop with a knife, and cut the pillow open and shake it out. Then bring the pillowcase back to me." The next day she returns with the torn pillowcase, and she says, "Here, Father, I've done everything you've instructed." He says, "Now, I want you to take this pillowcase and go back home and find all the feathers that flew out of it and put them back in the case and sew it back up." He says, "But Father, I can't do that. The wind has come and taken all those feathers and carried them to God knows where. What you ask is impossible." He says, "So it is with gossip. So it is in the way that you've spoken about your neighbor in such a careless way, and now you cannot put it all back. It's out there. All you can do is own where you've been with it. The last point on this text that I really want to make, something I mentioned in the prayer, that particularly in the last couple of years, particularly on social media, when you hear again and again speech, maybe you just wanted to go on and see pictures of your high school friends or post something about, what you ate at dinner. Please don't do that. Anyway, and then you get this kind of ugly vitriol. How many of you have ever gone, don't show your hands, but I wonder how many of you have gone on a social media site and you intended to be there for about 5 or 10 minutes. When you're all said and done, you're on there for a couple hours, and when you get off, you feel either angry or depressed. Because it's discouraging what you read. And as you read the more and more discouraging back and forth fighting amongst people that are friends, that you love both, maybe several, and you're thinking, how can these people who I love be destroying each other in such ways? And then at the end of it, you go away feeling apathetic to the world. Like you just want to go do something else. You just want to throw your hands up and say enough. Because that's the other damaging thing about loose speech is it gets us to a place where we're cynical or apathetic, or we become complacent, or we just say, it's just too much, I'm too overwhelmed, and there's nothing I can do. And so the damage of the words makes us believe what I believe is a lie that says, you are something less than the beautiful, treasured creation of God, a son or daughter of the living God, who God has made to do something beautiful. A vessel of good news, of joy to the world. That is who we are, period. And when you read that garbage again and again, and you feel less and less hopeful in the world, it makes us passive. It makes us so discouraged that we give up. And so I want to say to you, think about not only what you say as don't say this, but instead of the do's and don'ts, I want you to think about how can I, through my speech, be an encourager? Be somebody who builds up others. Be somebody, when people hear me, they feel good news. They feel like, I want to talk to this person. I want to listen to this person because they have something wonderful or kind or compassionate or encouraging to say. I feel lifted up when I am in their presence. Not, oh my gosh, here they come. Let me get out of here, quick. Where's the exits? So James would have us to think very seriously, not only about what we do, not only about the faith we live, but also how we back it up through our speech. So, in closing, I'll go back to that earlier moment in the sermon. If today was all we had, and God asked you, how you been doing with that, kid? With the life I've given you? Where would you be? And if you're at a place where you're like, no time like the present to start turning it around. Amen? Amen.